Verse 9, then one of the 7 angels with the 7 bowls full of the 7 final plagues came and said to me, come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a mountain great and high, showed me the holy city of Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, shining with the glory of God. Its radiance was like a most precious jewel, like a jasper, as clear as crystal. The city had a great and high wall with 12 gates inscribed with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, and 12 angels at the gates. There were 3 gates on the east, 3 in the north, 3 in the south, 3 in the west. The wall of the city had 12 foundations bearing the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The angel who spoke with me had a golden measuring rod to measure the city and its gates and its walls. The city lies 4 square, with its width the same as its length. And he measured the city with the rod, and all its dimensions were equal, 12,000 stadia in length and width and height. And he measured its wall to be 144 cubits by the human measure the angel was using. The wall was made of jasper, the city itself of pure gold, as pure as glass. The foundations of the city walls were adorned with every kind of precious stone. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So this is a text about the future new creation that we talked about last week. God is making all things new. That making all things new process has already begun, hasn't it? If any man is in Christ, he's a new creature. If you're saved, if you're a Christian, you belong to Jesus, you are the sprout, a shoot of the new creation. And the good news is you're a part of the new creation walking around in the old creation. The line between the new creation and the old creation actually goes right through you. Part of you is part of the old creation. Part of you is part of the new creation. The good news is it's not going to stay like that. Is that ultimately all of the world will be filled with the glory of God. All things will be made new. There's nothing that won't be touched with this newness. And here we see the city of the New Jerusalem coming down. Remember last week we said it would be wrong. I think some Christians, we read this and we get this idea and say, okay, so there's like a new world. Got that. Okay, and then there's a New Jerusalem. So I guess the New Jerusalem is kind of like the capital of the new world or something like that. And we said last week, I don't think that's probably the best way to make sense of this passage. It's pretty clear that whatever the new creation means, it's what the New Jerusalem means. There's no difference. The new creation is a New Jerusalem. It's another way of looking at what it means to be a new creation. And actually, I would probably push a little bit further on that and say, I think the New Jerusalem speaks of the people of God. Who lives in the new creation? Who lives in this new creation? It's the people, the people of God. And that's who we're meeting here. Now, some of us probably gravitate more towards city life, and others will tend to like more like a country or rural kind of environment. I used to think that I liked living in a big city, and then I lived in very, very large cities for 15 years. And if I can never go to a city like that again for the rest of my life, that would be awesome. I would love that. Cities got city problems, right? What are city problems like? Well, to us, we hear the word city or inner city or a dense city or a mega city. We start thinking of being crowded, of crime, of sin, even of pride. And you see that in Revelation. There's another city in Revelation, isn't there? The city of Babylon. And that is the kind of city that we think of, the city that's built on human sin. The city that's the sum of all things that sinners can do when sinners get together to do sinful stuff. It's the system that sinful people make. We call it the city of Babylon. And Revelation says that city is doomed. That city's done for. But we might say, oh, so now comes the countryside of God. Right? We got rid of the city of man, so God's going to bring the countryside of God. But no, it's actually the city of God. God's building a city of his own. Now, I was trying to think this week, why is that important to say that in the future we're going to be a city? Again, we're not talking about streets and sewer systems and buildings and stuff like that. That's not when we say the city of the New Jerusalem. We're talking about this people that God is making. But he compares us to a city. Why is that important? Well, if you live in a city, your life is always touching other people's lives. Now, if you live out in the countryside, you can go days without seeing people. right? Some of us say, that's exactly right. I'd like to sign up for that. But in the city, you don't have that luxury. The city, what kind of a place is a city? City is the kind of place where somebody gets a flat tire in their car on the way to work, and then 1,000 people are late to work because that guy got a flat tire in the interstate. And because those 1,000 people were late to work, 10,000 meetings were rearranged and 10,000 things got pushed to another day. Schedules were all messed up because one guy got a flat tire on the highway. Why? Because you can't just have your own personal flat tire in a city. Your personal flat tire sends ripples throughout. So in other words, in a city, everybody is together. Their lives are overlapping with one another. They're unified for better or for worse. They stand together, and more often they fall together. And so we might say, listen, if there's going to be a heaven, I hope it's a big countryside because I just want to be away from everybody. No, the good news is that we'll finally have a city like we need. It's a city where our lives will all be in perfect interlocking patterns where we're not driving each other crazy, where we're not always stepping on each other's toes, where we can actually work together and be unified without destroying all of us. So we see this pair of cities in Revelation, the city of Babylon and the New Jerusalem that God is building. We said last week, the city is coming down from God because we said God's already building the city. And it's in the presence of God. You're a Christian, that's where you are. You're already connected to that city. That's one of the things it means when we gather as a church. See, when we gather as a church, we're like a little city here. Now, we're a pretty small city, right? More of a village, if we're honest, right? But we get together here, and what's going on is we're saying we're just like the city of God. We're unified without hurting one another. We can work together and cooperate on large, important things. Most importantly, the worship of God. We can gather together for the ultimate project of worshiping God without making a mess of it. Now, sometimes, because, like I said, that line of the old creation goes through us, we still make a mess of it, right? So this is not the ideal city yet. But in God's mind, the city is already there. And here it's coming down. The people of God are coming down to live in the new creation that he has built. So the first thing I want us to see here is I want us to kind of get clear on who the identity of this people is. Who is this city? Notice that the number 12 is all throughout this passage. Again, we're at the end of Revelation, so by now we got to know how some of these things work. The number 12 in Revelation is important. It talks about the people of God. Okay, so this city gives the dimensions. Some of your Bible translations will try to turn this into a unit of measurement that we use today. But in the original language, or the translation I read today, it says 12,000 stadia long. The stadia was a common Roman form of measurement. 12,000 stadia by 12,000 stadia. Now, by the way, that's real big. How big is it? Well, it's about the size of the known world back then. This is like from Boston to Denver. Okay, it's like a big, and back to them, that was as big as the world that they knew. Like the the Roman Empire, the Greek world. That's how big it was. So when he says it's not just a city like we think of. This is a new world that's like a city. It's called the bride. If you weren't sure who this is, verse 9, I will show you, the angel says, the bride. So the city equals what? The bride. Who's the bride? We the bride. That means we're the city, right? We're the bride, we're the city, we're the people of God. And so you see this repetition of the number 12 and 144. There's 12 gates, and there's 12 foundations to the city. And what are they named after? They're named after the tribes of Israel, and they're named after the 12 apostles of Jesus Christ. That's what we're built on as the church. What are we built on? We're built on the foundation of the prophets and the apostles. Okay? To be a church means we're connected to Israel. And we'll see this again later, but the only promises that we have are Israel promises. Okay? Now there's a very common way of understanding the Bible in America that wants to take the promises of the Bible and sort them into two baskets. There's Israel promises and there's church promises. I want to tell you, I think it's pretty illegitimate. It's pretty clear that the church here, the people of God, were built on the foundation. It's a 12-fold foundation. We're built on 12. We are the people of God. The promises of Israel belong to us. So it's a connection to our history, to the apostles of Jesus who have passed the gospel down to us. So the city is the people. And we use this language today. We'll say something like, Cincinnati loves chili. It's like, Yeah, but it's not the buildings that love chili, right? Or the streets that love chili, right? Who loves chili? The people of Cincinnati. We say Cincinnati loves the Bengals. It's like, yeah, it's not the buildings don't love the Bengals. The buildings don't care anything about the Bengals, right? The people of Cincinnati care about the Bengals. Who's glad that it seems like we're meeting in the morning just in time, right? Bengal season starting today. So the city is the people. And this is a symbol we want to remember. We're a city, we're a people that is united, that we're living together, and that we're unified for this good purpose. Now, the most important thing of all about this city I want to show you is that it belongs to God. So the perfect dimensions of the city, let me just talk about this real quick. It says it's 12,000 by 12,000. Now it should remind us of a number we saw earlier in the book. Remember we saw the 144,000 earlier in the book? That's 12 times 12 times 10 times 10 times 10. And we said that's Revelation's way of saying the entire complete people of God. And you can line them up in a perfect array and nobody's missing. You know what that's saying? God's design is coming perfectly true. When God builds his people, nothing will be left out. Nothing will be left out. You know, almost any construction project, guys, you do any job around the house, right? Even if somebody comes over and says, oh, you did pretty good, we can see the problems, right? We see the little things that we didn't get done. We see the things that we messed up. Our plans never quite fully measure up. God don't got that problem. His plan fully measures up. When it's done, it's a perfect 12,000 by 12,000. Nothing is missing. It comes out exactly according to his blueprint. And frankly, nowhere else that you've ever lived measures up, does it? Nowhere. I mean, there's nothing else you do. One of my favorite things that C.S. Lewis ever wrote, he was talking about how nothing in this world can satisfy our hearts. And he says, when I say that, I'm not talking about, he says, your marriage can't fully satisfy you. You know, taking a nice holiday can't fully satisfy you. You know, your job can't fully satisfy you. And he says, let me be clear. I'm not talking about bad marriages. I'm not saying bad marriages can't satisfy you. I'm saying the best of marriages can't fully satisfy your heart. The best of jobs can't fully satisfy your heart. The best of nations can't fully satisfy. The best of jobs can't fully satisfy your heart. When you get everything this world has to offer, you're still lacking. You're still not in a place that fully measures up to what you need. Everything's about trade-offs. We design the very best of our ability, but it never fully materializes. So beware, friend. I've got to be careful about this. There's certain people that are always thrashing back and forth in their life. They got no stability. They bounce from one thing to another. Why is that? Because they're always thinking, if I could just get to the right place, I'd be fully satisfied. If I could just get to a different house, a different family, a different church, a different building, a different job, a different city or state, a different school, then I'd be fully satisfied. Well, maybe you should switch one of those things, but I'm just telling you, you're not going to fully satisfy you. You're still going to be left wanting the ultimate. See, we were made for this city, and only this place will fully measure up. Something that's missing in every other people and place that we've ever lived in. And what is it that's missing? It's God. God is not with us to the extent that he will be at this time. So that's why verse number 11, what does he say about this city? Shining with the glory of God. This is a city that is radiant with the brilliance of God's presence. And that's why there's all this stuff about these precious stones. I stopped reading there because it's like a list of these 12 stones. And some of them I don't know how to pronounce, so we just stopped it there. But you know what all those stones are there for? Well, one of the things that they're there to do is to remind us of the beautiful temple that God had told his people, Israel, to build for him. If you were in the temple, I don't know how you imagine the temple in your mind, but just because it's a long time ago, I think we tend to imagine it just being like a bunch of gray blocks or something like that. The temple was a beautiful, magnificent construction, ornate with precious metals and precious stones. It would have glowed. It would have been a brilliant sight to see. And God did that on purpose. God wasn't just like trying to show off a lot of bling or something. God did that because he wanted to say, the richest experience that you can have is to be in my presence, to be at my house. There's a reason why when they made God's house, it had to be the nicest house of all. Okay, that's not saying, our churches should be remember, our churches aren't temples. Okay, our churches are gathering places for the people of God. Our temple is in heaven. But God wanted the place to be so beautiful like that so that it would astonish them and take their breath away, so that just to be there was a treat. You ever been to a place like that? Like, just to be there. Maybe a nice vacation home or a place that you've traveled or something. Just to favorite room in your house. Just to be there is a treat to your senses. And that's what God is saying. Like, just to be with me is going to be the greatest delight of all. That's going to be the greatest delight. And so to talk about this city, it looks like a temple. Got all the same stones. The Israelites, they read this like, I know those stones. That sounds... And the city's made of gold, just like our temple's made of gold, right? Another thing that people have commented on is how the city appears to be a cube. And in the Old Testament, there's only one cube in the whole Bible besides the cube of the New Jerusalem. And that is the most holy place in the temple. You go to the temple, in the most holy place, it's a perfect cube where the length and the width and the height are the same dimensions. So now what do we have here? The temple is not a place that you go visit. You see what it says down in verse 22? We didn't read down this far. Verse 22. I saw no temple in the city because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. In other words, God's presence isn't a place that we'll go visit sometimes for special occasions, on Sundays or something like that. God's presence is where we'll live. We'll live. The world will be God's temple. We will live with him forever. I also notice this very famously. It says there's a street of gold in the city in verse 21. The main street of the city was pure gold, as clear as glass. Now I don't know why, but that's like something that's captivated the imagination of people for centuries to say the streets are made of gold. And that's because our streets are made of pretty much the hardest, toughest, ugliest stuff that we can find. You say, wow, God's making streets out of gold. That's amazing, right? Even Creed, can you take me higher to a place with golden streets? It's an American anthem. So we're captivated by this idea of golden streets. But what's going on with that? I notice it's in the singular. It doesn't say the streets of the city. The main street of the city is gold. So, okay, why does this new creation have a main street? Well, I don't know if you know this about ancient cities, but the reason you have a main street is because it goes somewhere. It leads to something, right? The main street leads up to the palace or to the temple, but the most central location, the most important location in that city, that's where the main street leads you. So to say the new creation has a main street is the way to say it's not like this city is just unorganized and there's no center to it, there's no beating heart of the city. There is a beating heart of the city, and what is it? The presence of God. God himself is, everything about this city is oriented. It's located around the presence of God. So we shouldn't think literally there's a street. And again, we're not talking about heaven here. Okay, so don't say, I'm so glad my departed loved one is now walking the streets of gold. It's like, this is a metaphorical thing. It's a symbolic sort of a thing. And it's also not talking about heaven where our loved ones are now. It's talking about this new creation that God is building. It's what it's talking about us. It's talking about what it's going to mean to be the people of God in eternity. It leads to the throne of God. That's why immediately after he clarifies, verse 22, I saw no temple. Just so you know, this main street, it's not like it's leading to a real temple because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. So the main street isn't leading to the temple. The main street is what is saying we have this path of access to God. Okay? So this vision shows us the people of God are safe with him forever. So let me show you a couple things of what that means. What's it mean to live in a city where God lives? What's it like to be in God's city? Let me just give you just a couple things real quick. The first one is it's safe. You're safe and secure from all alarms, as the hymn says. Notice he talks about the wall of the city being 144 cubits, 12 times 12. Now, what's 144 cubits? It's real big. Now, we don't know. Does that mean how thick the wall is? How tall the wall is? We don't know. We're not commentators disagree about that. But here's the one thing, whether it's how wide it is or how tall it is, it's a big wall. It's a big wall. It will keep out people that need to be kept out. Okay? And that's important, In an ancient world, People had no illusions. They knew that people that lived outside of their city could be dangerous. And so they wanted a wall. You wanted to live in a city with a wall. That meant safety. And we are meant to live in a place like that. This is the safety that's coming for us. It's the safety that's coming for us. So, first of all, we've got this security. Walls will keep out anything that would destroy us. Okay? Whatever would destroy you, whatever threatens you. The other thing I want you to show you is again to point out the you can almost say the decadence of the city, or the opulence of the city, the gold and the pearls and the precious stones. We talked about one of the things that's about communicating. Hey, this is a temple. This is the presence of God. But something else this is doing is talking about satisfying a deep desire in us to live in a place of beauty. I don't know if you've noticed our world becoming an uglier and an uglier place. It is. And, if you want proof of this, I invite you to go to downtown Cincinnati or anywhere else and go look at a bunch of buildings that were built 100 years ago. And you will leave very depressed. I mean, it's magnificent, but you'll leave a little depressed because it's an astonishing how we don't seem to have things like that anymore. Now, I don't know why that is. I don't know the reason why. I'm sure there's people that know a lot more about that. But the one thing I would say is it's a very fitting punishment for a people who have forgotten their God. If you forget God, God is the source of all beauty, and that's where ultimately our desire for beauty will be realized. And if we wander away from God, it should not surprise us that our world becomes uglier and uglier all the time. So that's what's going on here. It says we're going to, finally though, we will have a beautiful home. This is not optional for human flourishing. We need beauty. Christians, we are fans of beauty. We're for it. We're for making beautiful homes and beautiful schools and beautiful neighborhoods. We're for that. We're for it because we see that it comes from God. And ultimately, that's what God is saying. Finally, we'll be satisfied with the place that he makes for us. So we see the safety, the sort of richness of the blessings that God has prepared for us. Also says that everything that we need is going to be provided for. He also says down in verse number 23, we didn't read down this far either. The city has no need of sun or moon to shine on it because the glory of God illuminates the city and the Lamb is its lamp. Now, all these little notes, I want to encourage you not to try to make this literal because it just abuses the passage. Like, well, I know the new creation is not going to be a sun and a moon. Hold up, we have to remember this is a symbolic way of speaking. Earlier in the passage it said, last week we saw it earlier in chapter 21, he said there was no more sea. So well, I don't know if I really like going to the beach. Maybe I won't be able to go to the beach in the new creation. It's not talking about that, okay? These are talking about spiritual realities. So in Revelation we have to think, okay, what does the sea represent and why is there no more sea? In Revelation, the sea is the place of chaos. That's the hub of evil is the sea, right? Because the sea is always unstable and it's always churning up and terrible storms are coming off the sea. The sea is a good place to go get yourself killed. Okay? There's monsters lurking deep in the sea that people don't understand, right? And so the sea was like the origin point of evil. So when Revelation says there's no more sea in the new creation, doesn't mean there's no ocean and you can't go to the beach. What it's saying is that it's no longer going to be this place of evil. And same here, he says there's no sun and no moon. The point is to say, what does the sun and the moon do for us, friend? Well, it gives us life. We know that we could not live if it was not for the sun sustaining our lives. We could not live without the sun and its light. And here it says, who is it at the center of our existence, sustaining our life with his light? Of course, it's the Lord God. He'll be all the world to us then. Our lives will be full of life and light forever through him. And then notice two other things. Now, I want you to see that everything basically that we need, you think, what are the basics for human existence? Well, you need shelter. You need clothing. You need food. You need water. You need light. Notice those are the things that Revelation 21 is talking about in the new creation. It's saying those basic necessities of human life, we have them in a far richer way than ever in the new creation. So notice the water and the food. The water and the food. Look at the next chapter, chapter 22, verse 1. The angel showed me a river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb down the middle of the main street of the city. Now, you immediately think of all sorts of complications, like why do you got a river running down the main street of the city? But the idea is it's coming from the same thing. Where is the river coming from? Where does the street lead? To the presence of God. So the water is flowing from the presence of God. And this is the river of the water of life. Revelation has said repeatedly, you thirsty? Come get a drink. You thirsty? God has grace for you. So talk about the water of life is an immediately understandable symbol to say that we can have full satisfaction in knowing God. And then it says about the tree of life in the second part of verse 2. On either side of the river stood a tree of life, bearing 12 kinds of fruit and yielding a fresh crop for each month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Remember back in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve and their disobedience? They're expelled from the garden. God says, lest they take their hand out, stretch their hand out, take the tree of life and eat of it. They're banned from the tree of life. And now here we have access to the tree of life. Again, now it's not just one tree of life. It's a whole row of trees of life on either side of the river. I think the point is to say, if you're trying to build this picture in your mind, is everybody can have access to it. Okay? Everyone can have access to it. It says it bears 12 kinds of fruit. Is that number 12 again? In other words, this is Israel fruit. This is people of God fruit. The blessings that we're taking in are the same blessings that were promised to the fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And to say, he goes on to say in the next line of verse 2, the last line, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. The leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. You know what's wrong with our world is that we're sick. We're sick. We're a sick world. We have sick minds, sick bodies, sick hearts, sick families. We're sick all the way down. And we try very desperately to come up with some remedy, but this creation does not provide us with the ingredients that we need for healing. Many people are sitting here and you have an ailment. You have something that's wrong with you that this creation does not have the ingredients necessary to heal you. It's not here. We don't have it. We have something that can't be healed. But in the new creation, there's a tree that gives its leaves are good for the healing of the nations. Meaning there's nothing wrong in the whole world that can't be fixed in the new creation. That's the promise there. So there's food, there's water, everything that we need is provided for. And then last it says in verse, if you go back up to chapter 21 and verse 24. He says, by its light the nations will walk, and into it the kings of the earth will bring their glory. Its gates will never be shut at the end of the day. There will be no night there. And into the city will be brought the glory and honor of the nations. Real quick, prophets from long ago, they saw this coming. Before Jesus, the prophets looked forward and said, yeah, it looks kind of like God's losing, because he's got one little people of Israel that are on his side. He's got all the nations that seem to don't know God and don't care about God, but they said, it's all going to turn around. You see how right now all the nations disrespect Israel? They attack Israel. They laugh at our God. They think he's no big deal. Guess what? There's coming a day where the kings of those nations will come in a parade bearing gifts, lay them down at the feet of our Messiah. That's what's coming. For Israel, that was a huge, almost impossible thing to think about. I always find it funny. I was talking to a friend once, helping a friend, who was in an online discussion with a Jewish person. I was having a little friendly debate with this Jewish person, trying to share the gospel with him. And I'll never forget this. The Jewish person told my friend, you think Jesus is the Messiah. Obviously, he's not. Because the Old Testament says that when the Messiah comes, all the nations of the world are going to come to know the God of Israel. And I said, and he thought that was a point in his favor? That is a point in favor of Jesus Christ. Friend, before Jesus Christ, who in this world worshiped the God of Israel? Hardly anybody. The people of Israel worship the God of Israel, and pretty much nobody else. Today, on Sunday morning in 2024, who worships the God of Israel? People all over the world, 1 billion people around the world this morning, worship the God of Israel. Why is that? Because the prophecy is coming true. And we are we're bringing all the riches, everything we've got. We're bringing it and laying it before Jesus Christ. You're part of the fulfillment of that prophecy. The people of Middletown are bringing our riches, what riches we have, and we're bringing and laying it down. Our riches and honor, such as they are, we're laying them down at the feet of Jesus. We're saying, whatever I have, it's all yours. It belongs to you. Anything good that I have, it belongs to you. I live to praise and to worship you. That's a fulfillment of this prophecy. And here he's looking forward. John is looking at the end. Remember, John is writing this where still there wasn't many people worshiping the God of Israel. But it's starting. And he says, let me just tell you how this story is going to go. By the end, the kings of the earth will bring their glory and their honor, their riches, and lay them down at the throne. So he says there's no more curse. And he says, this last thing here, verse 4 of chapter 22, they will see his face. They will see his face. What a beautiful promise that is. And what does that mean, to see somebody's face? Well, I love that we live in the internet age, because a lot of us have all kinds of friends that we've never met face to face. All kinds of friends, right? We see them online. We've talked to them. We've chatted with them. And we don't even know what they look like, right? And then you have that wonderful thing someday where you get to meet an online friend. It's a very strange thing. It's a little uncomfortable, right? Because you just know, like, okay, this relationship just went to another level. Now we're at a different thing now. Now we actually have to look at each other. We know way more about each other now that we're seeing each other face to face. Now, do we know the Lord? We know him. But do we know him? Not yet. One day we will know him face to face. This talks about the relationship is going to another level. We will have a new reason to sing his praise, to glorify him, and to rejoice in him. So friend, we should live like this. We should live like this is us already. This right here is a picture of you. Chapter 21 that we just read, this is a picture of you 1,000,000 years from now. That's who you are. This is what your life is like, and so we should live like it. We should worship. We're going to talk about this next week. But if our future is full of God, if it's God's purpose that he's going to fill our world one day, well, guess what? I got good news. He's already starting to fill our world now. Look at you compared to an unbeliever. God ain't nowhere in his life. Not in his home, not in his heart, not in his mind, not at work, not in his neighborhood, not in his society, right? Not in his White House, nowhere. There's no God, right? But when you're a Christian, God is already starting to fill up your life, and you're running into him, bumping into him in all kinds of places. You didn't even expect to see him. You bump into him all over the place, right? He's crowding in, he's coming, he's surrounding you, right? You're beginning to know him, even though we're not yet face to face. And this means we ought to fill our lives with worship now. We'll talk more about this next week. But Revelation is calling us to a life of worship. It's calling us to a life of worship. And what does a life of worship look like? I'll tell you 4 things. Number 1, it's song. It's singing, right? We do this church. We say we're going to worship. It means we're going to sing. So friends, sing. Sing to the Lord. That's part of the Christian life. Just sing. Even if you don't do it very good, like me, sing to the Lord. And if you're going a whole week and you're only singing to the Lord on Sunday morning, I don't like your chances. I think you're not going to make it. Okay? You've got to start filling your life with worship. Sing to him all the time. Worship. Prayer. Prayer is worship. Prayer says, I have permission to come talk to God. That's worship. You come talk to God, that's worship. And so, is your life getting filled up with prayer again? If you're praying on Sunday, and God, I'll see you again next Sunday. That's not good. Start letting your life get filled up with worship. Okay? Service to the Lord is worship. Serving the Lord is worship. What's serving the Lord? Let me put it like this. Just doing stuff for no other reason except because you want to honor and please him. There's some things I do that maybe are serving God, but let's be honest. I mean, I kind of want to do them too. Right? But it's definitely serving the Lord when my only motivation for doing it is I want to please him. So have that in your life. And then last, confess to others what he's done to you. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. I'm redeemed. He saved me. He's forgiven me. All these songs are not just songs. He's done this for me. That means I got something to talk about. So if I'm talking to my friends and I'm giving them the impression that I'm a godless person like them, I'm not worshiping. But it's worship when I let them know, hey, just so you know, I'm a different kind of person than you. God's in my life. I know him. He's redeemed me. He's forgiven me of my sins. I know him through his son, Jesus Christ. I follow Jesus. I'm a Christian. Like when you do that, that's worship. You're confessing to other people that you know Jesus. So come see the city. The city here, that's how the vision starts. The angel invites John. He says, come see. And that's what we're supposed to do too. Come see the city. Come see the city that is secure from every attack, healed from every sickness, adorned with every beauty, populated with every good person, filled with every cultural treasure, supplied with everything your soul craves, free from every sin, and brilliant with God's presence.